Welcome to the Triple D Podcast, Donuts, Disability, and Discourse, where host Michael Liner talks to the best in the business about community, impact, business, and donuts. Here's your host, Michael Liner.
I'm so excited to have another episode of the Triple D Podcast this week. I have an awesome guest who I'm so excited to catch up with. I feel like it's been forever since I've definitely seen you in person, Adrienne. It's been like probably pre-pandemic. Is that right?
I think that's probably right. I don't think you and I have physically been in each other's presence since before COVID.
COVID has robbed us of that treat.
It really has. It really has.
But we're here together now, and we're at Peace, Love, and Little Donuts in Avon, Ohio. So how are things going? I've seen you, the ladylike lawyer.
Yeah.
You've blown up on social media.
Yeah.
What prompted that? When did that start?
So during COVID, I had high school twins, a boy and a girl, and they were
Wait,
in
how
their.
old are your kids now? They're not still in high school.
No, they're 22.
Okay.
They're 22. But during COVID, when in 2020, they were seniors in high school, and their world just completely stopped unnaturally in a weird moment in time. And it feels like that's the moment where everybody kind of turned more into social media to see what's going on. All of a sudden, my children, my teenage kids were around me every single day, and they're looking up. My daughter's looking up makeup tips, and my son's looking up, tips in terms of how to lift weights and how to pick up girls, all that stuff. And so I just became very fascinated, honestly, with all of the creativity on social media, and I began to wonder why I wasn't in this lane, because it's a natural lane for me. And so I really started thinking about branding myself and making sure that I had a very clear vision moving forward. And I started to just let down my guard and started to say things and tell people things about, my work life and things that I see in my work. And people started really to respond to it. And that brings us to here. That's how things have evolved.
How long did it take you from when you started posting, regularly on social until you felt like, wow, this is really getting some traction?
That's a good question. I know exactly when I started to get traction. It was November of 2022. It was one video that kind of really, really sparked a lot of things. All of a sudden, it was like that first thing that started to get me a lot of views and followers. And it was a video that I had done about being my point of view as a bankruptcy lawyer.
Yeah.
And up until that point, I hadn't really talked about my work life all that much in social media. I was posting videos of me cooking and running and doing the hobby things that, I think new people to social media will start to go down those rabbit holes.
Right.
And it just felt fun. And it was almost an afterthought to start talking about bankruptcy. But the moment...
Because who cares about, it's so niche to you. It's something you're focused on.
Yeah, it's niche to me. And so, but I think the other thing that's very interesting is, while it's niche to me, it is ingrained in my system. Like, I know it inside and out. And I also understand how advantageous it truly, truly is. It wasn't until I got on social media that I started to understand that people truly, truly did not understand bankruptcy, and definitely felt that word was a bad word. And honestly, that was a bit of a surprise to me. I think sometimes you're so far down the rabbit hole yourself, you're so far in it, you don't realize how other people see it. And so I see it as something that is so helpful and beneficial to people that it was actually shocking to me that everybody didn't just open their arms and say, tell me everything you know. So I think for me, the thought of demystifying debt, understanding the American economic landscape requires that we navigate it,
yes.
And not feeling like we are morally bad or we've done something wrong to be there. Because I think that, I don't know about you, Michael, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say you don't have all of the financial answers either. And
I have a lot of questions.
We have a lot of questions. I think the more you know, the more you realize that there's a lot of stuff you don't know. And therefore, keeping your mind open to all tools in the toolbox that might help your problem is really the first issue. And so I'm trying to open everybody's minds so that everybody understands that there are different ways to handle debt.
So let me ask you this, and I'm just so curious in how what you're saying is you've demystified debt and finances for people. What are like 3 things, if you can think of, that you were surprised that people didn't know about their financial lives or how you can help them?
Well, number one, I think when people hear the word bankruptcy, they think that means that their financial lives end in that moment. Most people don't understand that bankruptcy, the purpose is to take all of the pieces off of the game and start it over and rebuild from the ground up. And so the irony is that filing bankruptcy oftentimes is what kickstarts you getting back into the financial game, number one. Number two, most people don't think that you can file bankruptcy if you own a house or a car. That is simply not true. And I spend a lot of time explaining why that's untrue on my social media pages. And lastly, I think that people think that it's a waste of time to explore bankruptcy. They don't imagine that it might help their own situation, and bankruptcy can help people in all different economic categories with all different types of debt problems. People who own businesses who have had some bad luck, people who've been divorced. I've got people who are physically abused who are leaving their spouses and need to file. I mean, everything in between. No one person is the person who should file. Everybody should be considering it.
And I think a lot of people are surprised. I mean, to know that debt is bankruptcy is a tool, the way that you're capturing it.
Right.
I mean, somebody who everybody thinks of as, so rich and powerful, Donald Trump uses bankruptcy as a tool to help him create and preserve wealth. Isn't that true?
That is really important to understand, and not to go down the political road. I will also point out
the financial path.
Yeah, I mean, I will also point out though that Walt Disney filed for bankruptcy, and Dave Ramsey filed for bankruptcy. A lot of people have used the bankruptcy process, and those people used it so that they could get more wealthy, so they could clear out bad debt and restart. And that's important because businesses are using bankruptcy. Wealthy people are using bankruptcy. Why are people who could really benefit the most from it, people in middle and low income categories, why aren't they? They aren't because people are making them feel guilty and embarrassed about the situations they find themselves in. It's not embarrassing when you're Donald Trump and you can say, I bought this and I had to sell this and it's a big business thing. It makes it more special or more fancy or more legitimate. But the reality is that bankruptcy was designed to do exactly this. It's designed to clear out the debt so that people can become entrepreneurial, so that they can start to rebuild wealth. We did this in this country. Purpose of bankruptcy is to foster entrepreneurialism. And that's important to understand. These laws are never going to go away because everybody in all political spectrums need them and use them. And our economy requires that we have them.
So let me ask you this. You have kind of talked about how bankruptcy is a positive tool that people don't realize is available to them. Do you ever encounter pushback where people say, I don't want to harm other people by filing bankruptcy? Is there a way that you show them that you aren't doing that or they aren't doing that when they file for bankruptcy? Maybe they're...
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. You're speaking to really that morality, that feeling that we caused it and therefore we have to fix it, right? That's a natural feeling. Humans feel that way. We are good people and that's how we think of life. But that's how we deal with relationships. That's clearly, right? You and I, we are friends. We know each other. We're colleagues. We have a respect that's mutual. What most people don't understand is, number one, debt happens to a lot of people. They don't go out, they didn't cause it on their own accord. So when something happens to you unwittingly, you need a way to get out, right? For example, your spouse leaves you and they empty out the bank accounts and they've been, they've run off with somebody else and you are literally left just holding the bag. That's not your fault. You don't die as a martyr trying to pay off all the debt that person left you at the expense of your future, at the expense of your children's future. If you're not able to re-enter that workforce, if you're not able to start building money for your children's college education, for your own house, for those things, you'll lose time. There's just not enough time. So bankruptcy happens to people, number one, or debt happens to people. And secondly, companies are not operating with the same moral fortitude that we are. You got to understand, bankruptcy is designed for general, unsecured, non-priority debt. It's going to be credit cards, medical bills, personal loans. You can also surrender things you can no longer afford in a bankruptcy, like a car that's upside down, or a house that's upside down, or things you can no longer afford. And so when you're talking about these types of debts, the amount of interest that you pay is commiserate or equal to the amount of risk that creditor takes. So people feel bad about defaulting on their credit cards, but that's why credit cards have 18-24% interest, because that's built into the credit cards company's business model. They built that in. You worrying about it takes away the level playing field that you had coming into it. The risk that you take is the high interest. That's why a car doesn't have as high interest, because the creditor has security. They are secured, and therefore they have protection. If I'm going to lend you money and I don't have any protection, then I'm entering into a risky business deal. Yeah. And if you default, should you feel bad, or should you say, hey, you lent money to a guy who had no money? Right? That's what's happening here. And so I don't feel bad if the credit card companies and the loan companies and the check cashing places on the corners, in the corners by your Starbucks is trying to lure you in to give you a loan. Well, just for the record, I want you to know that it's a high interest for a reason, because they believe that a certain percentage are going to default. So make sure that you're not dying to pay them back, because they aren't dying to make sure that you've got what you need.
Right. So I want to talk about and you've got this broad message that you're using new channels to kind of spread. Tell me what this has done for your law practice.
No, that's a good question.
Talk about where we were, 2019, and how this has changed things for you today.
I think I'm still evolving. I think I'm still trying to find really what this means for me. I've been a bit surprised at the amount of followers and popularity that I've had. I'm still struggling to figure out what to do with all of that. I think a lot of people are. My personal practice, of course, has picked up, but I'm speaking to a national audience, and I can only practice bankruptcy law in northern Ohio. I can't do it all over the country. And so a large part of what I feel like I'm doing is trying to get information to people who otherwise wouldn't have it. So I definitely feel like I'm a free charitable organization right now, but it's definitely filling my soul. I've always been passionate about causes. I've been historically politically active, and that's been very frustrating. And I decided that I like to keep friends. So I found that really this avenue is allowing me to pursue and to be that passionate person that I can't always be. I am starting a podcast. I've been recording a podcast that will be coming out in 2024. And I am going through a program to do some more public speaking, some more in-depth and engaged public speaking on the things that matter to me. So I think that's what 2024 looks like for me. Trying to make sure that people are getting good information and that people have a trusted source to go to.
Yeah. Tell me about your podcast. Is it about bankruptcy? What's it about?
So my podcast doesn't have a name yet. I have a partner, and he is...
Triple D podcast is taken. case that was on the table.
It's a good one. It's a good one, Michael. It's a good one.
But there aren't any podcasts about cupcakes that I'm aware of. So if you want to do a
I'm
cupcake,
surprised about that, honestly. I'm surprised there are no cupcake podcasts. But I am the partner that I'm teaming up with to do our next podcast endeavor is an attorney out of California.
Okay.
He's a bankruptcy lawyer as well, but his niche is student loans. And I get a lot of questions about student loans, and it's very specialized. We don't have a name for it yet. We're taking names. We don't think that people want to pull up a podcast that has the word debt in it. So we're trying to find a way to convey our message without scaring people off. But, it's a process, and just trying to touch as many lives as possible right now.
Are you ready for this one?
Yeah.
The Triple C podcast, Cupcakes, Conversation, and Capitalism.
Ooh. I tell you what, our working name involved the word capitalism. So
See?
we are on the same.
Cupcakes,
we are on the
capitalism,
same.
and conversation.
I like it.
There
I like
you go.
it, Michael. I'm gonna run it by my team. I like it.
We can somehow co-produce these things, figure out some efficiencies.
That's right. That's
and
right.
we'll come together and eat desserts.
Oh my
time
gosh,
to time.
I love the donut concept. We have a Samoa donut, and it harkens back to the.
Oh, here we have the Samoa donut.
Yeah.
I thought you meant some back home.
Oh,
you have
no. I mean, but I'm thinking that we need a place that does a Samoa cupcake then. I mean, but this is a good shtick. We've got a good little thing going here in the peace and love.
Peace, love, and little donuts.
Peace, love, and little donuts, and they're so cute too.
I'm going to give you a tip.
Yeah.
So you're going to Ohio City after this.
Yeah.
I'm going to give a shout out here to Campbell's.
Okay.
On West 25th,
okay.
They have a Samoa cupcake
Really?
in there. Yeah.
Can you even believe that we just stumbled into this conversation? I'm heading to Ohio City after
that's
this,
how goes.
And out of 500 donuts up there, I picked the Samoa, and a place that has a Samoa cupcake.
Well, I'm basically
they should start a podcast.
I'm basically like a Find My tool for desserts.
Oh, I love it.
I can help you find any dessert or any bathroom in Northeast Ohio. If those two things are good, but they kind of go together, right? The guy who's driving around eating desserts needs a clean place.
I get it.
For later.
I'm a lady, and I'm on the road all the time, and I get that concept. I mean, we know where all the bathrooms are, so it's good to know that we're not alone in this quest.
So, we just earlier we kind of bring up something interesting, which has always fascinated me. I mean, your law practice is based in Sandusky. And I know that's not the only place where you serve clients, but kind of a smaller town in Ohio. What's that like in terms of how you market yourself as an attorney in a town like Sandusky?
Yeah. Well, I've been doing it a long time, and I've stayed in the same firm the whole time. So people pretty much know where to find me. Honestly, longevity, being out there is obviously exceptionally helpful. But I have law partners. We work together on a lot of the marketing. We all commit funds. We have common goals. We all value each other, and so as a whole, our firm is exceptionally forward thinking when it comes to advertising, marketing. We really monitor our social media channels. We try to be receptive to people's inquiries. We try to be thoughtful about what they might say if they're unhappy. Like we think about that. That's something we think about in advance. But listen, being out there just helps a lot. We encourage. We try to do a good job so we get good Google reviews, word of mouth. It's really important to be authentic, transparent.
Yeah.
When there's only a couple of you in town, they're going to come back and forth, and they're not going to have a lot of other options to look at, and you want to stand out. Or you want to make sure that people know that locally they can be served by somebody with with a lot of talent that they don't need to go to a bigger city. I happen to be smack in between Cleveland and Toledo.
Right.
And, up until COVID, it was actually a bit of a disadvantage to hire me because I had to drive an hour to get to the hearings, where local lawyers in the cities didn't have to do that. So for me, I feel very fortunate that the playing field's been leveled a little bit, and I'm competing economically with these lawyers because we're all doing it remotely. So that's been advantageous. But we don't say no to a lot of things. We say yes before we say no when we come up with advertising options, and we try to change things up so people don't see the same thing every time, and we try to tout our successes. If we're good at tooting our own horns and saying this is what we've accomplished. I think that's important.
Now, we've been working together for probably close to a decade at this point. It feels like a long
At
time.
least.
I feel like, yeah.
At least.
It's been quite a while.
Yeah, do you know how we started working together?
Well,
I do.
through Kyle, because Kyle's like best friend forever we share one, is Alan Tittle. And Alan, is that not how? I always thought that was how. You're gonna throw me a curveball here.
Actually, I had reached out to you because I was doing Social Security disability work for a while. I was doing a lot of it because my other half of my practice is workers' comp, the part I never talk about. I had been doing Social Security disability for quite some time.
You had a few disability cases.
I did.
And now I do remember that.
And I had seen you several times, and I actually reached out to you to start referring a few cases to you because I was winding mine down. And I oftentimes tell people when I'm sending them over to you, I say, listen, I used to do Social Security work. I have a general understanding of it, but I stopped doing it because these guys do it better. So and then when Kyle came in, Kyle is a law partner of mine, and he came in, and one of his very close friends is friends with you.
Right.
And I think that kind of locked up, but I had already reached out to you because I knew I wasn't going to do it, and I wanted somebody to do it. I wanted to send my clients and people who were calling me to somebody that I knew could do it right. So that's how I ended up sending people to you.
Well, and I must be doing it right because all these years later, we still get plenty of calls from people referred by
You're our number one.
friends
You're our
in your
number one
office.
guy to refer Social Security work to. You're doing a great job. You've been doing it a long time, and I did have an opportunity to see you practice, and I do know. I know all these years you've done amazing work for my clients. You've even help with personal friends of mine.
Yeah. Well, what I remember specifically, even if I don't remember how we got to the conversation, is I remember you said to me what I tell people all the time, which is Social Security is not a field where you can be switching hats around a lot. It is very unique in the way that the cases are set up, and it's hard to go from probably more of an adversarial process to Social Security, which is supposed to be non-adversarial, even though for me, maybe that's what makes me different than other attorneys. I see the government as my adversary because they are trying to deny benefits for my clients who I know are deserving. But that was actually, I think you were probably one of the first people who told that to me, which is, I know what I'm doing here, but it's really hard to switch from handling a workers' comp case to a bankruptcy case and now a disability case. But it really is just very niche and unique, but you saw that. Now, the conversation is naturally going towards something that I wanted to ask, and maybe you said. So, has your social media helped you focus more on bankruptcy than, like you said, you were very evenly split, workers' compensation and bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Has this caused you to narrow down a little bit more with a bigger audience?
Well, that's a good question, and the answer is no. My workers' comp practice is still quite robust, and again, a lot of people don't even realize that's a big part of my practice. I'm an Ohio workers' comp specialist, as certified by the Ohio Supreme Court, and it's the area of law that I've always done. It's the area of law my stepfather did. I went to work for him right coming out of law school, and so coming through, I actually started doing Social Security work before I picked up bankruptcy work, because Social Security, the medical part is what I understood really well. The medical translated, I understand medical reports and diagnoses and ICD codes and all those types of things. But the problem is the bureaucracy with Social Security as opposed to the bureaucracy with workers' comp. They are just so different that we couldn't streamline those processes well enough. Now, is my workers' comp practice reducing? No, it's not. It's a big the problem with workers' comp, and the reason I don't generally talk about it, is because it's not national. People in Iowa would have absolutely no use of any information I would provide about an Ohio workers' comp system because it's only within the walls of Ohio. And frankly, it's complicated and unfair and unsafe. And you don't know what's going to happen a lot of times, which is why it's very frustrating. So it's not like you can give people very clear advice. This is what's supposed to happen, but it only happens half the time. And so that's part that I don't enjoy. It's still a huge part of my practice. I'm still doing the same amount of workers' comp. But my bankruptcy practice is definitely more streamlined. I talk to clients and they're not waiting 6 months, like the process is just cleaner and much more robust and clear. And that's the part that has changed in the last years is our onboarding process and our ability to handle more and more while still accomplishing everything I need to do.
I wanted to ask that because I wasn't sure if you were saying that there was change in the bankruptcy system or just the systems inside your own office.
The systems inside our own office. Yeah, I think COVID really did help. I mean, it helped you analyze what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, where you can cut out, how you can streamline your processes. There were some things that I was doing prior to COVID that were just a total waste of time. So I've learned how to be better time management with the two areas of law that I practice at this time.
There's so many similarities in the sense of, just I hear the way that you describe how, you were always kind of at a disadvantage traveling an hour to hearings no matter where you were going.
Right.
And then COVID made it so that's not the case anymore. Social Security, the walls fell down for us because, we had probably the largest practice in Ohio before the pandemic,
right.
But it was hard to ever think about expanding beyond that in the sense that it doesn't necessarily make sense to fly an attorney out to California for one hearing. But now all of our hearings are on the phone, and the way that we've refined our systems over time, we can help somebody in Alaska and Hawaii just as easily as I can help somebody who lives down the street from my office. It makes no difference.
Which is fascinating, and I'm very envious because the Social Security process is flat across the nation.
Yes.
The problem with bankruptcy, and the thing that prevents me from being able to do that is, while bankruptcy is federal law, each state is allowed to interpret certain things certain ways. It has to do with property rights, so what a state thinks is important in terms of owning your home is reflected in what you're allowed to do in that state with your home. So there's just, I could never advise somebody in the state of Washington and have that advice be good for them as it is in the state of Ohio. However, I have learned that, as long as you have good access to internet, and you're on top of your files and you're doing what you need to do, you can do this from anywhere. I can handle anybody's case in Ohio from anywhere if I needed to or if I wanted to. And that alone is amazing. My workers' comp, half of those hearings are now by telephone, which has freed up, right? It's again that balancing act of being able to onboard more clients on this side because you're not traveling so much on this side.
Yes.
So it's a constant game. And I would say that it is, for somebody like me, who's 52 years old, right? And I came up and I did everything the way I was supposed to, right? College, law school, intern, bar exam, straight into practice, never took a year off, did all the things, hustled through, had my babies, got married, became partner. It didn't occur to me that there were other options. I just thought that was my path. I didn't understand my path might have other small paths along the way, or there might be paths off of that path. I think that somebody my age needed to see other people doing it to recognize that this is just something I can do. I needed permission to do it, honestly. And I think that COVID and the way that the world has changed gave me that permission that I felt I needed to start looking at what else I could do with this fabulous knowledge that I've got, and how can I help people and what can I do with it.
Yeah, and now your platform is expanding. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, now comes my favorite part of the podcast, because as you mentioned, we have a couple delicious looking Samoan donuts.
Oh my gosh, these look we've had to stare at them the entire time we've been talking.
That's like what I didn't figure in when I started doing the podcast, is how I would have to sit here and stare and smell these things. But what it does, it makes me appreciate it more once it's finally in my mouth.
That's right.
So we've got the Samoa donut here at Peace, Love, and Little Donuts in Avon, Ohio. We're going to taste this together.
I'm not even really sure what is a Samoa, like, is it like toasted coconut, I think?
Toasted coconut.
Yeah.
We've got some
chocolate and caramel.
A chocolate and caramel drizzle on top of a cake donut, of course, because of the theme of this donut shop. It's a tiny one. Not quite bite size.
I'm going to say this is a two-biter.
Is that a two-biter?
This is a two-biter.
I've got a big mouth. I could probably get this down. But, let's taste it and see what we think. I'm so glad.
Cheers to you, Michael.
Cheers to you.
Oh, that's delicious.
That's really good.
It does taste like a Samoa, Girl Scout Samoa cookie.
Well, thank you so much for coming out here and spending some time with me. And let's not go another 5 years without seeing each other.
I agree. We do chit chat every once in a while. It's not, we just haven't seen each other physically in person.
We'll make it happen more.
I agree. And once I get a name for my podcast, we'll have you on it.
You got it. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so
very much.
Thanks for listening to the Triple D Podcast, Donuts, Disability, and Discourse. Rate, subscribe, and tune in next week for more discourse and donuts.